Which disease in the Elder Scrolls is the most deadly? That is the question we will be looking at today. I picked out all the major diseases in the Elder Scrolls history. We are going to look at their lore and at the end decide the most deadly one. And first is the Corpus disease. Corpus didn't start as a disease, it started as a weapon. Dagoth-Ur didn't just want to survive under Red Mountain, he wanted to remake Tamriel. And to do that, he needed something more than soldiers or spells. He needed something that could spread without end, something that wouldn't die, wouldn't break, and couldn't be cured. That was Corpus. It came from the heart of Lorkhan, buried deep beneath Red Mountain. When Dagoth-Ur awoke and tapped into the heart's power, he began reshaping flesh itself. The Sixth House cult wasn't just a political movement or a forgotten religion. It was a furnace where the future was forged, and Corpus was the fire. The first signs of Corpus were subtle: a cough, a fever, a rash that wouldn't heal. Then came the swelling, the bloating, the smell. Skin cracked open and oozed. Faces twisted into permanent grimaces. Fingers fused together or stretched into claws. Eyes bulged or disappeared. Voices turned to grunts. The mind didn't just fade, it broke. Some victims laughed to themselves. Others screamed for days. Most forgot who they were. And all of them obeyed. Not the tribunal, not the empire. Dagoth-Ur victims were pulled toward Red Mountain, crawling through ash and blight winds, drawn to their new god like moths to a fire. They gathered in caves and ruins, worshipping in the dark. Their numbers grew. The cult spread across Vardenfell. Some still looked human. Most didn't. These were the Corpus monsters, hulking, immortal, mindless things that stumbled across the land, killing whatever they saw. They couldn't be stopped with normal swords. They didn't feel pain. Even fire barely slowed them. And they couldn't catch the flu or the shakes or any other disease because Corpus wiped out everything else inside the body. It was a twisted kind of perfection. Worse than that, it was contagious. Blight storms rolling down the slopes of Red Mountain carried invisible particles laced with divine energy. That energy worked like a signal, a beacon, rewriting the bodies of anyone weak enough to be reshaped. Whole towns had to be abandoned. Guards wore masks and helmets, but it didn't help. The temple tried prayers. The empire sent soldiers. Nothing worked. Then something strange happened. The Nerevarine caught it, but instead of going mad or turning into a monster, they stayed themselves. Divaith-Fir, an old Telvanni wizard who had spent centuries locked away in his tower studying the disease, had tried for years to understand it. He had test subjects, he had theories, but he never had a cure. Just control. But when the Nerevarine came along, he found something new. Using bits of Corpus mixed with pure magical extracts, Fir made something that wasn't quite a cure, but close enough. It stripped away the madness and the rot, but left behind the immunity and immortality. The Nerevarine was no longer human, but also no longer dying. They had become a fixed point, immune to every illness, frozen in time, able to walk through the heart of the blight untouched. That made them the perfect weapon against Dagoth-Ur. Corpus was supposed to be the end, but it ended up creating the one person who could stop it. If the Nerevarine had failed or never come, Corpus would have spread. Slowly at first, just across Vardenfell. Then, maybe to the mainland. The heart of Lorkhan was still pulsing under the mountain, still feeding Dagoth-Ur's dream. Whole races could have been transformed. Dagoth's vision wasn't of conquest, it was of evolution. A new kind of being, stronger, faithful, shaped in his image. Corpus was how he planned to do it. And it would have worked. No sword could kill the disease. No scroll could banish it. It was divine blight, not just a sickness, but a curse made out of god magic. You couldn't stop it with alchemy or healing prayers. The tribunal knew it. The empire knew it. Even the Daedra kept their distance. No one wanted a piece of what Dagoth-Ur was building. It wasn't just dangerous, it was permanent. Even now, after the heart was destroyed, and the blight faded, Corpus still lingers. Divaith-Fir's tower still has patients infected with it. He keeps them locked away, fed, and studied, not out of cruelty but curiosity. They can't die, they don't age, they barely remember anything, but they're still alive. That's the worst part. You could lose everything, your mind, your body, your voice, and still be stuck there, alone inside your own head forever. There aren't many diseases in Tamriel that scare gods. But Corpus came from a god. It was a message from Dagoth-Ur to the world, written in skin and blood, and for a while it almost worked. Next is lycanthropy. In Tamriel, lycanthropy is more than a curse. It's a transformation passed through bite or blood, often spread during violent attacks in the wilderness. Most cases involve werewolves, but there are also werebears in Skyrim and wereboars in more southern regions. Those infected begin to feel the change slowly. At first, it's restlessness, sudden fits of anger, strange dreams, and an unnatural craving for the hunt. But then the full moons rise, and the change becomes real. The body shifts, bones break and reform, fur tears through skin, and the victim loses all sense of self. Many wake up in the woods, soaked in blood, with no memory of what they've done. Some never come back at all. The Companions in Whiterun are one of the most famous groups tied to lycanthropy, using it as a rite of passage and claiming strength through the beast. But even they admit that it takes years to resist the full loss of control. Those who can't are driven out, or worse. There's also the Glenmoral Witches, known for curing the disease, but only if the subject hasn't given in completely. Some Daedric princes are connected to it, most notably Hircine, the Prince of the Hunt. He sees lycanthropes as his chosen prey and playthings. His realm, the hunting grounds, is said to be where all true were creatures go after death, locked in an eternal chase. During the Oblivion Crisis and other moments of chaos, lycanthropes were used by cults as assassins and saboteurs, slipping into towns and spreading fear before vanishing again. They're hard to detect, as they blend in during the day, and not all show signs until they shift. A common myth is that silver weapons hurt them more, which is true in some regions, but not universally. In the Iliac Bay, some nobles were rumored to be secret werewolves, using their power to intimidate rivals or survive poisonings. In Valenwood, Bosmer legends speak of wild packs that never returned to elven form, living in the deep forest and hunting travelers. The vigilance of Stendarr hunt them, often burning whole cabins or woods to root out a single beast. Being bitten isn't always immediate death. Some infected people manage to resist the change for weeks. Others give in after a day. Strong minds can delay it, but that doesn't mean they're safe. Once the full moon comes, the body acts whether the person agrees or not. Some infected choose to end their lives before the first change, especially priests or nobles who fear what they might do. There are scrolls in the Arcaneum in Winterhold that describe entire villages wiped out overnight, the only survivor locked in a cellar after hearing howls and screams above. In some darker tales, lycanthropes form cults, claiming their beast form is purer than mortal flesh, and using their strength to hunt down those they call Praekin. The only true cure involves severing the soul's bond with the beast. This requires rare rituals, often involving Daedric artifacts, and not all survive the process. In Morrowind, where outsiders are feared, werewolves are hunted down quickly, but some Ashlander clans see the curse as a punishment for weakness. The Imperial Legion once tried to draft infected soldiers in secret, hoping to use them in night raids, but the plan backfired when a garrison turned during a lunar eclipse. In High Rock, there's an old belief that lycanthropes are blessed by ancient gods, and some barons kept one as a kind of pet champion. Over time, the stories change, but the fear remains. Unlike vampires, who can hide their nature with charm and social skill, lycanthropes live in dread of their own body. They chain themselves in basements, flee from family, or seek out dangerous rituals to stop the next transformation. There are whispers of wervultures, were crocodiles, even werlions in remote parts of the world, though most scholars dismiss these as local myths. Still, the Daedra are strange, and Hircine's reach is long. When someone disappears in the wild, and their torn clothes are found days later, the people of Tamriel don't ask too many questions. They assume it was a bear or a troll. But sometimes the tracks are human, then animal, then gone. That's the mark of the beast. And once it happens, there's no going back to normal life. You either run, fight, or give in. No town welcomes a known lycanthrope. Even those who claim to be cured are shunned. In the lore, lycanthropy is not just a disease, it's a doorway to another life. And the person who walks through it may never return. Next is vampirism. Vampirism in Tamriel is not a simple disease. It's a curse that carries power, hunger, and history. Known in most regions as sanguinare vampiris, the infection usually begins with a bite, a scratch, or contact with infected blood. It takes hold slowly. Over the course of 3 days, the body starts to change. The infected grows colder, weaker in sunlight, and hungrier in ways that can't be satisfied by food. When the final stage sets in, the victim dies and rises again, not as themselves, but as something else. Their heart stops beating, but they keep walking. They gain strength, speed, and night vision. Some even gain the power to charm others or vanish like mist. But they also inherit a deep thirst that never goes away. Blood becomes the only thing that matters. Without it, they grow feral. In some cases, they lose their minds entirely. There are many kinds of vampires across Tamriel. In Cyrodiil, they blend in. The Cyrodiilic clan is known for their ability to move through society unnoticed. They don't burn in the sun like others. They form secret groups that run businesses, gather information, and even influence politics. In Morrowind, vampires are hunted and hated. The different clans there, Onde, Burn, and Quara, each have their own strengths. The Onde are magic users, Burn focus on stealth, and Quara prefer raw strength. Their presence is tied to ancient bloodlines and Daedric influence. In Skyrim, vampires often serve the Volkihar clan. These vampires live in castles of ice, control the undead, and have deep ties to Molag Bal. Some even transform into monstrous bat-like creatures. In the Iliac Bay, vampires serve as nobles, assassins, and warriors. There are dozens of bloodlines across the region, each granting different abilities. Some control animals, others teleport, and a few can paralyze with a touch. Vampirism spreads silently. A single vampire in a village can lead to dozens over time. Some vampires create followers, others act alone. Many choose to live in ruins, caves, or abandoned towers. They avoid light, strike at night, and hide their faces under hoods and masks. The danger isn't always the bite. It's the slow influence. A noble seduced by a vampire can turn a city to darkness in months. A mage corrupted by the promise of power can poison their guild. Vampires rarely act without purpose. They are predators that think and plan. They know how to use fear, charm, and violence. But not all vampires are evil. Some fight their nature. In Skyrim, there are stories of vampires who only feed on bandits or animals. In the Dawnguard, some former vampires help others find a cure. The Vigilants of Stendarr try to hunt down vampires, but even they admit the threat is too large. The cure exists but is rare. In the early stages, shrines or potions can help. Once full transformation happens, only strong magic or divine help can reverse it. The Mages Guild sometimes holds rituals for this purpose, but the process is painful and not always successful. Some priests say the soul is stained forever. Others argue that redemption is possible. Vampirism comes from Molag Bal. He created the first vampire through a violent ritual that binds the soul to his will. In his realm, Cold Harbor, vampires serve as guards and enforcers. The Daedric connection is strong. Some vampire cults worship him directly. Others hate him but cannot break free. There's no single rule among vampires. Some live in cities, others in the wild. Some build empires, others hide in fear. But all are tied to the same hunger, and all must feed. The danger of vampirism isn't just death. It's the quiet change. A friend turns cold. A lover grows distant. A child no longer plays in the sun. By the time the village notices, it's too late. The disease spreads fast and hides well. Unlike other diseases, it doesn't kill the body, it kills the self. Some embrace it. They see immortality, beauty, and power. They abandon their families, their duties, and their morals. Others resist, clinging to memory and identity. But even the strongest will break over time. The centuries stretch on, and with them comes madness, regret, or worse, acceptance. In the wider world, vampire politics are complex. They fight each other as much as they fight mortals. Rival clans wage silent wars. Alliances rise and fall. A vampire might rule a village, a province, or even whisper in the ear of an emperor. The fear of vampires runs deep. In some lands, people burn bodies after death to avoid reanimation. In others, towns hold festivals to ward off the night. Garlic, silver, and holy water are used in folk rituals. But most of these offer false hope. Vampires are cunning and old. They know how to avoid traps. They have centuries of practice. The lore treats them with both fear and fascination. Books like Immortal Blood tell stories of vampire hunters who travel the land, tracking these creatures down. But even these stories admit how hard the fight is. For every vampire slain, 2 more take their place. The Elder Scrolls speak of events where vampire influence grew so strong that it shaped history. In the time of the Interregnum, entire kingdoms were ruled by vampire lords. In the Second Era, the rise of the Grey Host nearly brought down the known world. Even the Vigilants couldn't stop it. The battle was fought in shadows, behind closed doors, and hidden catacombs. Vampirism's danger is not just in strength or speed, it's in how deeply it can hide. It corrupts from within. It replaces trust with fear. It turns heroes into monsters. Vampires have existed since the early days of Nirn, and will likely remain until the end. There is no end to the hunger, and no cure for the fear it spreads. Their stories continue, whispered in inns, recorded in tomes, and feared in every province. Whether alone or in groups, hiding or ruling, vampires are one of the most dangerous forces in Tamriel. And unlike other threats, they don't always strike with fire or sword. Sometimes all they need is a conversation, a charm, and an invitation into your home. Next are some common afflictions. The Elder Scrolls world is full of weird little diseases that show up when you're adventuring, sleeping in the wrong bed, or just touching something you shouldn't. Things like ataxia, brain rot, and droops don't have the power of Corpus or the curse of vampirism, but they still show up a lot. They usually don't kill you, but they mess you up in annoying ways. One might ruin your agility, another might slow your magicka or make you clumsy, sick, tired, or weak. Brain rot sounds terrifying, but all it does is cut into your magicka. Droops? That one tanks your strength, which is funny until you can't carry your sword. In Oblivion and Skyrim, you'll run into these diseases a lot. They show up on bandits, on animals, or in old ruins. One moment you're fighting a skeever, the next you get a message that you caught Rockjoint. Sometimes you won't even notice until you check your stats and realize your stamina is down. Players usually just pop a cure disease potion or visit a shrine and they're back to normal in seconds. That's the thing, these diseases feel more like gameplay flavor than actual danger. They're not part of any major story. They don't lead to bigger events, and they rarely stick around long enough to matter. But they still help set the tone. You're not in a clean world. Even the rats can mess you up. In early Elder Scrolls games like Daggerfall, these afflictions were everywhere. There were dozens of them, each with small effects. The names were often gross or weird. Witch's Pox, Caliron's Curse, Swamp Fever. They all had stats tied to them, like -10 to personality or fatigue drain over time. It made the world feel like it was full of problems you didn't even understand. And sure, most of them were still easy to fix, but sometimes you'd get hit with 2 or 3 at once, and things started stacking up. You could cure one and still be limping around. It wasn't about killing the player, it was about keeping you uncomfortable. By the time you get to newer games, like Skyrim, there are fewer diseases and they're more basic, but they're still there. Rockjoint, Whitbane, Sanguinare Vampiris, if you count that. And yeah, most people just ignore them. But lore-wise, these diseases are real in the world. People talk about them. Shrines of the divines say they cleanse them. Temples exist partly to cure the sick. Potions are brewed and sold for this exact reason. That means even if they don't affect gameplay much, they matter in universe. Regular people in Tamriel are afraid of catching something just as much as being attacked by a goblin. A traveling merchant might lose everything because he got yellow tick fever and couldn't move fast enough. A mage might waste weeks recovering from wither. These little sicknesses don't start wars or change the world, but they add that layer of daily danger that makes the Elder Scrolls world feel like a place where you have to be careful. Every time you get bit by a wolf or open a cursed chest, there's that tiny risk that your stats take a hit. It keeps things grounded. So yeah, compared to Corpus or the Blood Curse, diseases like droops and ataxia don't look impressive, but they're the most common ones out there. They're the ones that get under your skin when you're not paying attention. They don't need to be deadly. They just remind you that Tamriel is a dirty, broken, dangerous place, and even something as small as a rat bite can make your life miserable for a while. And lastly, we have the Nahatan flu. The Nahatan flu is one of the most devastating diseases in Tamriel's history, a silent killer that swept through the southern lands during the Second Era around year 560. It first broke out in Black Marsh, the homeland of the Argonians, a harsh and mysterious place already filled with dangers. The disease spread fast and mercilessly across the swamps and marshes, moving outward into neighboring regions such as Elsewhere to the west, southern Morrowind to the north, and even parts of Cyrodiil. What made the Nahatan flu so feared was not just its deadly nature, but its ability to kill vast numbers of people in a short time. Entire villages and towns were emptied as families succumbed one after another. The symptoms came quickly: fever, weakness, coughing, and a painful decline into death. Unlike magical plagues like Corpus, which transformed victims into monstrous, immortal creatures, the Nahatan flu was straightforward in its brutality. It destroyed the body without mercy, leaving no hope of survival for most. The flu caused mass panic, with survivors fleeing their homes, disrupting trade routes and military operations. The Argonians, however, displayed a strange and unexplained immunity to the disease. This immunity puzzled scholars and healers across Tamriel, as no one could explain why the Argonians, who lived in the disease's epicenter, did not suffer the same fate. Many believe the answer lies in the Hist, the ancient sentient trees of Black Marsh that govern Argonian life and connect their minds. Some speculate that the Hist either granted their people protection or even played a role in spreading the disease deliberately or as a natural defense. This link remains a mystery and a subject of debate among scholars. The flu's impact on the Argonians was minimal compared to the devastation it caused elsewhere, making Black Marsh one of the few places not broken by the plague's fury. The neighboring region of Elsewhere, home to the Khajiit, suffered greatly from the Nahatan flu. The Khajiit population was ravaged, weakening their hold on their lands and affecting their political power. Southern Morrowind, inhabited by the Dunmer, also faced severe losses. These losses altered the balance of power in Tamriel, as kingdoms weakened and alliances shifted in the face of such widespread death. The Empire felt the effects too. Imperial governors struggled to maintain order in the provinces hit by the flu, and the disease slowed down military movements and trade. With many towns emptied or quarantined, the flu contributed to economic decline and political instability in the southern provinces. One of the harsh realities of the Nahatan flu was the lack of a cure or effective treatment. Unlike other diseases that could be treated with potions, magic, or alchemy, the flu resisted all known remedies. Healers and mages worked desperately, but the flu's swift progression left them powerless. This hopelessness added to the fear surrounding the disease. The cause of the Nahatan flu remains unknown. Some ancient texts hint that the disease might have been a natural outbreak, while others suggest it was engineered or spread through magical means, perhaps even by forces tied to the Hist or darker powers. The secrecy of Black Marsh and the silence of the Argonians on this subject only deepened the mystery. Despite its deadly toll, the Nahatan flu eventually faded from the lands. The reasons for its disappearance are unclear. Some say the disease burned itself out after killing so many, while others believe the Hist intervened to protect their people. Whatever the cause, the flu left scars on the history and landscape of Tamriel. It reshaped political borders as weakened kingdoms lost territories. Entire families were wiped out, and some cultures nearly vanished under its weight. The social consequences lasted for generations as survivors rebuilt their lives amid loss and fear. The Nahatan flu is often overshadowed by magical plagues or grand wars in Tamriel's history, but its quiet devastation was no less real or terrifying. It was a reminder that not all threats come from swords or spells. Some come from unseen sickness that no one can fight with steel or magic. It stands as one of the deadliest natural disasters in the world of Nirn, a lethal force that changed the fate of many peoples and regions. The flu's legacy continues to shape stories told by healers and historians who warned that such a disease could return at any time, a lingering shadow over the lands once again. The Nahatan flu shows the fragile balance of life in Tamriel and how even the mightiest can fall to simple disease. It is a dark chapter in the continent's history, remembered not for glamour or magic, but for its merciless grip on life and death. And so, which is the deadliest? In my opinion, it is Corpus. Corpus stands apart from all other diseases in Tamriel because of its unique and terrifying origin. It was created not by nature or accident, but by Dagoth-Ur, a godlike figure whose power comes from the heart of Lorkhan, a divine and mysterious source that shaped the very world. This alone sets Corpus apart as more than a disease. It is a weapon and a curse born of divine will. When a mortal is infected with Corpus, the effects are unlike any other affliction. The skin rots and warps in grotesque ways, and the body changes beyond recognition. The mind itself breaks down, plunging the victim into madness that strips away their sanity. What makes Corpus truly horrifying is that it grants a form of immortality, but it is twisted and monstrous. Those infected cannot die by normal means. Their bodies regenerate, but they become something else, beings that are part human, part nightmare. They are called Corpus monsters, cursed to wander endlessly with no hope of rest or peace. Unlike other diseases, Corpus is completely immune to all known cures or treatments. Alchemists, healers, and mages have tried and failed to find a remedy. The only exception in history is the Nerevarine, a prophesied hero who was cured through divine means, an event so rare it is considered a miracle. Corpus also spreads madness and corruption. It is not just a physical blight, but a spiritual and mental poison that damages the very soul. Victims lose their minds, becoming dangerous even to those around them. This made Corpus not only a personal curse, but a threat to entire communities, as the infection could cause chaos and fear wherever it spread. The disease's impact is tightly linked to the land of Vardenfell, the volcanic island at the heart of Morrowind. This region's unique magical and geological nature helped Corpus thrive, especially near Red Mountain, the volcano where Dagoth-Ur's power is strongest. This close connection to place and power made Corpus both a local plague and a potential world-ending threat. If the disease had spread beyond Vardenfell unchecked, it could have overtaken all of Tamriel. The unstoppable nature of the infected and the madness they spread could have devastated kingdoms, empires, and peoples across the continent. This possibility makes Corpus the deadliest disease in the history of Nirn. The story of Corpus is not just about sickness, but about the clash between gods, mortals, and fate. It shows how a divine curse can twist the natural order and threaten the existence of entire civilizations. The efforts to stop Corpus, the struggles of those infected, and the rise of the Nerevarine who overcame the curse are central to the story of Morrowind and its people. Corpus is more than just a disease. It is a symbol of divine wrath, madness, and the fine line between life and death. Its legacy reminds us how fragile life is and how powerful forces can shape that life in dark and terrible ways. Among all diseases and curses in Tamriel, Corpus stands at the top, not because it is the most common or well known, but because it combines divine power, unstoppable transformation, and madness in a way no other affliction does. This makes it not just dangerous, but uniquely terrifying and unforgettable.